Johnson Toussaint L'Ouverture Byrd II, or as more easily identifiable as Donald Byrd. He's been loved and sampled by later generations, sampling his work from Ice Cube, Public Enemy, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, amongst others, and worked with the very best in his day, including Art Blakey and the Messengers, John Coltrane, Max Roach, Sonny Rollins, Thelonious Monk, Eric Dolphy, Herbie Hancock. The list goes on. After playing in a military band during a term in the United States Air Force, Byrd obtained a bachelor's degree in music from Wayne State University and a master's degree from Manhattan School of Music. In the early 50s, while still at Manhattan School, he joined Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers as Clifford Brown's successor. But it would be Blue Note Records who cunningly signed him in 1958 as an already established artist, but very aware of his potential. He then had a burst of activity with albums such as Royal Flush, Bird in Hand and Off to the Races. He then felt it was time to take a sabbatical to continue his studies in Europe, where he spent some time under the tutelage, probably said that wrong, of the legendary French music educator Nadia Boulanger. He returned to the US in 1963 and recorded A New Perspective, incorporating gospel choirs into its arrangements. Its signature piece, Cristo Redentor, certainly returned a few heads at the time, but during the mid-60s he turned from musician to educator, teaching in many universities. As Herbie Hancock once said, teaching seemed to be in his blood. By 1969 he'd seemed to have a new perspective on life, and Byrd was moving away from the hard bop jazz, always looking forward. He began to record jazz fusing with R&B and above all funk, and thank God he did, because for me this is when his best work happened. 1970s Electric Byrd had a more of a bitches brew flavour, and the jams in 1971's Ethiopian Nights were much longer, full of funk. It was at this time that he teamed up with the Mitchell Brothers for Blackbird in 1973, which was for many years Blue Note's best-selling album. And as a side note to his musical career, Byrd had finished law school in 1976 and went on to teach at North Carolina Central University. He would eventually land a PhD. There is one exception after he and the Mitchell Brothers went their own way after Caricatures in 76 that is 100% worth a mention. The album Love Byrd, 1982. Enter Isaac Hayes' partnership. 2 tracks here make it into my top 10. Chef from South Park. But what I love about Donald Byrd is how, unlike many musicians who couldn't slide over from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s, he definitely did, where his teaching kept him in touch with the youth, which enabled him to keep with the trends and away from his comfort zone. So he gracefully moved through all those years and transitions much easier than other peers at the time. As Herbie Hancock said, because Byrd was an educator, he was a key influence in his early career, recounting that Byrd took the young pianist under his wings when he was a struggling musician having newly arrived in New York, even letting him sleep on a hideaway bed in his Bronx apartment for several years. Hancock also credits Byrd for giving him one of the most important pieces of advice in his career, not to give away his publishing rights. In his twilight years, he would slowly step away from making music, or at least commercially releasing music. He did work with Guru on the popular Jazzmatazz record, which was incidentally the first time I heard of him at that age. I was about 16, as well as all of his music that was being sampled at the time that I wasn't so aware of in hip-hop during the 90s. Did you know that even jazz legend Donald Byrd covered the track Dancing in the Street back in 76, which had already at that time been covered about 40 times. But Mick Jagger and David Bowie certainly made the most of this one. Now, into my top 10, as that's what this is all about, paying homage to these musical magicians. My top 10 can be broken down to 3 parts chronologically, showing his transitions from his 60s jazzy stuff through to the 70s funky and soulful stuff, all the way to the late 70s and early 80s, where it's getting more disco fever. I've laid it out this way because it just shows you how good he was over so many decades, transitioning through different genres of music. And I do believe that was because of his educating skills, keeping in touch with the youth and the trends always, and always looking to break new ground, try new things. And Donald Byrd never seemed comfortable centre stage or on camera, but his music always did make sure it reached his intended audience. You would all agree, I'm sure, he's up there with the very best.